Hel- Hello? Hey, welcome. There is no transition. Hello, welcome to the stream. It's me, Shoctorr. If you remember me, hopefully. Hi. Looks like a lot of people are here. Get present, sit down. I hope you have your popcorn, your coffee, your tea. Get nice and comfy. We have a nice interview here. We're going to be talking about the upcoming Outfit Wars tournament with the one, the only lead game designer for Planetside 2, Wrel. Hello, Wrel. Here, I'm gonna give you the clap audio. Yay!
Hey. Hey, what's going on?
So, for those of you who don't know who Wrel is, I don't know how you don't know, but Wrel is the lead game designer for Planetside 2. He has been. How long have you been on the dev team? I've actually never asked you that. I feel like.
Let's see, almost 6 years? Almost 6 years.
Nice. Yeah, so used to be Planetside 2 player, creator, and then now even more of a creator, creating the game itself. But for those of you who know, tournament is starting very, very soon. We have, I believe, enlistment starts on August 5th. Am I correct? Or August 3rd?
Tomorrow, August 3rd.
Sorry, my bad. So August 3rd is when teams will be able to start signing up for the Outfit Wars tournament. They'll have, I believe, what is a week to get themselves the outfit resources that they need to sign up, and then they will also need to list about 48 players who will be playing and confirmed to play, and then they'll be ready to go for the qualifying phases, just the tournament in general. So okay, we're just gonna go right into some basic questions real quick, just for people who are new. This is gonna be going on YouTube as well, so if anybody catches it as well, either during the tournament or before the tournament, they'll likely want to know, at least from your perspective, like, what is Outfit Wars?
Yeah, Outfit Wars is a. I need a pitch statement for this. It is a instanced event that groups of 48 players, which in our game, just for people who maybe don't play Planetside 2 but somehow see this on YouTube, an outfit is like a guild in other games, but 48 players versus 48 players this year will engage in one-on-one group-based combat as they fight their way up the ladder and eventually, hopefully, take home a gold medal, a silver medal, a bronze medal, that sort of thing.
Nice. Yeah, it's super fun format. It has changed a little bit, so we'll be talking about that in a bit for people who were here last year and played in the previous one. Another great question that a lot of people will probably be asking is where we'll be fighting, which is a very exciting question.
Yeah, Nexus is a continent that was like teased back in 2013,
Yeah, I
maybe
think so.
2014. Is pretty early on, but never made it live. And we're gonna make use of that continent now in a little bit of a cleaned up form for the latest Outfit Wars season.
Yeah, and it's a cool map. We've got some cool screen grabs that we'll be showing throughout this interview for people who aren't that familiar with it. Um, so I guess moving into some of the questions that I think a lot of people have either been hearing or have been saying, like last year there were a lot of naysayers, and then now we have some naysayers this year as well. The last year naysayers were very big on the fact that it wasn't competitive due to the fact that there was a third team, lots of king making, and then now the people who were on the opposite side, who were pro Outfit Wars, are kind of switched due to the 1v1 nature. So from your perspective, why bring back Outfit Wars again? Due to the amount of people who either last year or this year are, kind of on the naysayer side.
Yeah, I think that one of our jobs as developers is to kind of sort through some of that, just because there might be people who don't like the format, don't like the fact that we're investing resources into it. That's not everybody. And it's important for us to know that because ultimately our goal is to move the game forward. And after almost 10 years, going to hit that anniversary in November, we just are trying to do greater things. And it was very clear from last year that people had an interest in Outfit Wars, despite the drama, which I'm sure we'll kind of cover in some respect as we move forward. It seemed like a very compelling form of gameplay for what is traditionally very sandbox, open, do whatever you want style of game. So I think that our elder players in particular have a real interest in being able to prove themselves on a kind of like an isolated battlefield with a really specific rule set that both teams are on board with you know uh, uh, fighting against. So it's worth it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think a lot of people might not necessarily participate directly in the tournament, but I think the effects that we saw last year of the tournament led to a lot of growth in the community. Whether it was new players coming in, new viewers watching the game, pushing the game up the directories of Steam, Twitch, YouTube, like viewership, players. It was, we reached new heights. So I do agree with you in that perspective. And then proving yourself is also a big thing that I also agree. A lot of the older players who are kind of like that upper echelon of the community. They really enjoy doing stuff like that, which you kind of see from Jaeger and whatnot. Um, so I guess to kind of pivot from that, so like many say that the chaos of 1v1v1 is what makes Planetside unique. What made the team kind of decide to go for this new 1v1 approach and veer away from what people would call traditional Planetside?
So just as a I was watching one of our interviews way back, and we talked about this. Never said that 1v1 was off the table, and we even talked about that particular point because 1v1 does make sense as a format. It is something that we wanted to try at some point, but in order to pitch a feature that seems so radically different from kind of the tried and true, we really needed to, for a few reasons, start with a 1v1v1 format because it had one of the reasons is that it had the lowest tech overhead to actually get implemented. Another reason is that it very or it more accurately represented kind of the Planetside experience. So when it comes to making a system like this more appealing or like broadening that appeal, like there is something to be said there that could get people interested. And uh, just moving to a 1v1 format was like again something that we wanted to try, but we were so far away from that it would be I think it'd be very similar to the ask for like, oh, do OSHR and underwater combat and whatever else. We just can't get all the pieces at the same time, not with maintaining like a reasonable development cycle. So 1v1 feels like an evolution of the format. And my goal personally is to find some sort of baseline where we can avoid the drama that was created in the past year as much as we possibly can. Find a way for people uh, I guess get used to the format. We were hoping that would be the case with the 1v1v1, but it had its own problems. Um, but find some sort of game mode that we can kind of just maybe experiment with in the future as well. Like, it doesn't always need to be this way. The 1v1 kind of like really restricted, and we'll talk about some of the rules later. But as long as we have a foundation, we can always build on it.
Mhm. Okay, so I guess that makes sense more in hindsight now as well, because I feel like a lot of the times when you're going through patch to patch, like the periods between patches can kind of make you forget what happened previously to understand the history of the mode. But I actually, just from you speaking right now, it's like almost like an epiphany where it's like, technically making a game like Planetside sandbox to instance 1v1v1 to 1v1 takes a lot of steps, and then in addition to that your team also has to manage actually making the rest of the content for the game, like you said, balancing releasing Osher with releasing a new Outfit Wars season, with getting ready for the 10-year anniversary, doing weekly events, the other events that people are used to, like the summer event, Halloween, Christmas, etc. So I think it's interesting, and I think a lot of people, I think looking back in hindsight, will, I think, have a lot more, hopefully at least, of an understanding of why these baby steps were there. So I think that that does bring a lot of insight into just how we got to this point. Because yes, in that interview, I believe it was the one with me, you, and Zyros, we were talking about different ways to improve the format. And I do recall you saying like 1v1 isn't off the table. It was just one of those things that in order to bring out the current version of Outfit Wars and to get it tested, tried and true, we kind of had to do what we had to do. So I do think that'll bring a lot of people kind of a some level of understanding again, hopefully. So just some kind of minute questions about the format. So there's um there's kind of the matches are about an hour long when you include the actual play time plus the prep. But it looks like there's 30-minute windows between the matches. Was this intended due to time constraints or ensuring the live server flow continues for the non-participants? Can you kind of walk us through that? Because I know a lot of people get very invested in the tournament, and they want to catch all the matches. But when there's overlap, there is a little bit of a, I guess, disappointment.
Yeah, I feel you. Are you talking about specifically for uh, the championships, or just kind of the in general?
I saw in general. So the championships also are there with the I believe it starts at, is it noon server time for the specific
Right.
servers, and then the next match starts at 12:30. So yeah, it might be both or it might just be the championship, but regardless, that was one of the things that was brought up specifically by me and Kamikaze actually when we were discussing that I guess that 30-minute period, especially from casters. I guess we want to see both the matches. So just kind of interested in kind of the mindset towards that. Is that something that might be changed, etc.?
Yeah, I got you. So the so that window is, you mentioned like facilitating the live server, and that's a part of it. Um, I don't know that we have the timing like perfect for everybody. Like imagine if we have, especially in a 1v1 format now, you have if 20 outfits sign up, you got 10 matches. Well, I guess it'd be split over 4 different time periods, but even then, you're having multiple matches at the same time. So even multiple at 8 o'clock, multiple at 8:30, you're not going to catch everything regardless. Um, but we were really just trying to find uh, a time where players could get off of work, hopefully, sit down, get organized, start playing, and also not be so late at night on a Sunday in particular. And some of this factors into the championship stuff, that it would just ruin your night, or like make you have to wake up with less sleep in the morning. I don't know if
Mhm.
it's a great rationale. Honestly, I don't know the best time slots,
I kind of
but
understand it. Like, especially, I think about the first thing that popped into my head when you kind of said that is kind of like the NFL, where like matches for the NFL are like Friday nights and then Sunday afternoon mornings. So, um, but it does remind me of like when I was younger, I wanted to like stay up and watch the Super Bowl because that was at night on a Sunday, and my mom would never let me. So I do kind of understand. I understand that. And that does kind of pivot to the next about like when it comes specifically to the championships being at earlier times relative to the normal matchups. So I guess that kind of answers both of the questions. It's more of just kind of I guess kind of the expectation from you and the team about the average life of, I guess, a lot of the players. Even though I would maybe argue some are more on the degen side, and they probably staying up super late regardless. So I understand your rationale. So um, is any of that subject to change though, or is that kind of we're locked in?
I think for this season, it might be a little bit difficult to pivot. Yeah, and there's not a, because we're in an international game, and then even outfits. You have people on Connery playing on Emerald, and people from Miller playing on Emerald, or like just it's. I don't know that there's necessarily a right answer for all of this, but for the time being, I think we're locked in. Might actually, I'm saying this without talking to anybody about it first, but I think that we would still have time to change the championship timelines if we want to. And the championships kind of stand out as special. Like, we do have the 30-minute overlap. Some of it is to prevent to like not drain the sandbox. Some of it is also to prevent like ringers from jumping in, which was a major concern last Outfit Wars. I don't know that it'll be as big of a concern this Outfit Wars, despite some of the things you may read on Reddit. But but the championships in particular does have that sort of like same overlap, and I didn't really like that last year because yeah, it's if it's a championship matchup, you kind of want to like, okay, this is who's fighting for bronze place, who's fighting for gold and silver, and have like a clean division between, and even also have like some time in between to where like you can kind of talk about recap the last match instead of this like jumping around. That way, everybody kind of gets their moment. So I might take that back to the team and kind of like see if we can adjust the championship time slot. But prior to that, I think we're going to keep so from finals on down locked into to where they are now, but open to feedback in the future, of course.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, I think that perfectly answers the question, and I think that's cool that it's kind of subject to change. Excuse me, especially when it comes to those championships, because yeah, I know a lot of people are gonna look forward to both first and second, and even the third and fourth place matches for their servers, because these are gonna be outfits that a lot of these people have known for basically a decade now, and they're gonna see their friends and stuff playing in the tournament, or they might be playing themselves in the tournament, and there's a lot of validation I think that comes with being seen and showing your stuff. So, which I think is probably one of the major, I guess, facets of the tournament, and in keeping everybody really excited moving forward. So I guess into the next question. Last season there were occasions of repeat matches with the same teams going head to head. Are there any measures being made to kind of avoid this and offer more of like variety to the competition? I think a great example was like I played with Help last season, and I think we versed B-Way 3 times, and it's they're a great team to verse, but it's you end up versing the same teams over and over again, and I think it's just kind of due to that seeding that was there last year. So, is there, I guess, any sort of thing to give more teams the opportunity to verse other teams, and maybe versing same faction teams might offer more to that variety? But I'll kind of hand it to you here.
Yeah, that's a big part of it for sure. So a couple of things. Moving to a 1v1 format just means that you're going to have more matches in general. Uh, Being able to fight the same faction, more matches or more matchups in general. And then this year we're using a very clearly defined bracket or like tiebreaker system that that will also I, I think it should do very well, ensuring that people don't match up all that often or do repeat matches all that often. Um, we'll have to see kind of how it shakes out, but it's kind of exciting.
Hmm. Yeah, I think like if it's a championship or playoffs matchup that is a repeat from like the regular season, if you want to call it that, that's fine. But I know a lot of people were not too fond of having to verse the same teams over and over in like the regular season, which then prevented them from kind of moving into the playoffs. So I think what you kind of said there is kind of 100% on point. Just more teams, less teams in the specific matches by one, and then just more teams to verse because you can verse the same faction outfits. So that should
I want
be
to
very exciting.
I want to call out real quick that last time we also had bugs that were
Hmm.
like matching people up. Um, yeah, some of the servers had like the exact same matchup. I think it was a pigs game
Yeah.
in particular
Hmm.
where they ended up fighting the same team, and I think that was probably a tipping point too, where people were like, okay, we're just going to throw, um, and some of that was just the format that we screwed up. Some of it was because we didn't have enough matchups either that would like divvy people up, and then another portion is we just didn't have enough outfits on that the 1v1v1 format to create like a number of different matchups. Soltech in particular had it pretty bad, where they just by virtue of being a very small server had a lot of repeat matchups kind of throughout the entire event. I'm sure you'll see some of that repeating, but in general, I think think that things should be a lot better this year.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's very reassuring to I think a lot of people who might have been worried about, maybe versing too high skill teams or teams that were too maybe low skill, and they want to have like very competitive matches. And I think we'll kind of go into more into the format as well moving forward here about like win conditions and stuff about the map. But one more question, kind of along these lines. So now that we're bringing on this same faction fighting, I think this might be the first time really in this game's history that you can actually fight the same faction and not like get weapons locked or something like that. So that's a really fun opportunity. It brings a lot of new gameplay that I think a lot of people have never had in this game. But one question that does pop up to me, did you play Battlefield 2042?
A little bit. I haven't played their newest or their new update
Uh,
or
I I
new
haven't
update.
I haven't touched the game really since it launched, but one of the major things that I had with that game was, they brought in the heroes, and it was essentially the exact same people on both sides. So like the whole target acquisition thing was a little bit difficult when like, there's like the healing lady or the zipline guy, but on the other team it's the exact same people. Uh, is that, do you think, going to be an issue like target acquisition wise for players, and then visually for people watching, if let's say two NC teams are going at against each other, uh, is that going to be an issue? Is there anything that is kind of in the pipeline to ensure that you know who your enemies are, or like people who are watching, or like are they team killing each other, or are they on different teams, stuff like that?
Yeah, the so I'm sure there's still going to be some of those issues, and but some of the steps that we've taken to kind of alleviate those issues are that if you're on, so you're always fighting blue versus red. It is, and they're also on the same sides of the map every time too. Not sure how much that'll factor into the scheme of things, but we when we show icons in the HUD in the UI, for the most part, we're using your faction decal so that there is a little bit of a distinction there. Over the capture points, this is something that we just got in today. I actually didn't expect us to to go this direction, so it was kind of a surprise. But the above the capture points, when you if your NC take capture point is blue and then has a little NC logo kind of like pulsing there, we're using alpha and omega instead as far as indicators, as well as the color differentiation. So that'll help from the facilities perspective. It'll help from the map perspective. But when it comes to the person versus person sort of gameplay, tracer colors should be different. For most weapons, I'm sure there's going to need to be some cleanup, but for the most part, if you're on the red team, your tracers are going to be red. We did a lot of work during the escalation or during integration update to kind of revamp tracers so that they could do different colors and that sort of thing. And that's just one of the many baby steps that we talked about earlier to kind of get us to where we're going. Um, the You will see a little bit of faction tinting on a very little bit on like you're a vanguard that has a red stripe on it. Realistically, not going to be super helpful.
Hmm.
But some things that we might be able to do in the future is do like, okay, well, if you're on the red team, everybody's just dressed in a red camo. If you're on the blue team, we just overwrite and give you blue camo. That's not tech that we have currently, but it is potentially something that we could do. But the other thing that we do have access to, well, yeah, the other thing that we have access to is when you go into Outfit Wars, this map is going to, or rather, your HUD indicators are going to switch over to an Outfit Wars specific color setup. So if you play with like faction colors on live, that obviously won't work when you're fighting the same faction. So you can set your indicators up specifically. And I think one thing that will naturally help is that everybody's going to be in a squad
Hmm.
or a platoon on the same faction. So if you don't see an indicator above somebody's head, you should probably shoot at it.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, I think the and then I don't know if this is also something, but I recall in the Shattered Warp Gate update, there was the destroyed vehicles, and you could like essentially like pull them out and then make them usable. So I remember seeing like TR Vanguards or like NC Mag Riders. So is that kind of what you mean by like the stripes and whatnot? Like you're gonna kind of see those like little nuanced versions of both vehicles?
Right.
Okay.
And it's not super helpful from a distance. And honestly, most of the time, our camos kind of blow away the target identification anyway. But between all of the factors, hopefully people will kind of be able to pick up on it. But I agree. It's one of the major concerns that we had going into a 1v1 format. And I think the last step would be like uh, a dedicated camo for each side. But again, not there at the moment. But we'll see how people react. I think the derelict vehicles that people were able to reclaim, it certainly caused some confusion, but at the same time, there's enough in the way of like HUD indicators and that sort of thing that I think people kind of picked up on it. Um, but we'll have to see. Yeah, I'd be interested in the feedback.
Cool. Yeah, I think a lot of people will most likely definitely have a lot of feedback. That's definitely something that can be expected. And I think to kind of close that out, I think the way the map is set up this time around relative to Desolation, it's more of like a tug of war. So you kind of expect which team is going to be on which side. So I think that should hopefully, also make things a little bit more clear from the viewer perspective. I think from like the player perspective, if you're doing a lot of HUD stuff, like yeah, you're in a platoon, you're likely gonna have, your custom colors that you've had since whenever you started playing the game, plus the additional stuff that I believe you guys put in the patch notes about the dedicated Nexus Battle Island Outfit Wars HUD. So I think that should more than likely make things a lot less confusing than Battlefield 2042. The amount of teammates I would shoot, and then the friendlies that would just shoot back, and we'd be like, the hit detection is horrible, and it's like, wait, we're teammates. Anyways, moving on. So let's kind of talk about Nexus. So I guess a good question is first off, why Nexus? I know a lot of people kind of talked about Nexus last year. I was one of those people that was like, there was this thing that was announced years ago from you could call it essentially a different development team because I don't think really anybody's kind of still around. Maybe a couple people are maybe still
We
around.
still have some,
Okay.
yeah, no, for sure, but for the most part, definitely, there's a there are very few old faces comparatively.
We'll call it a revamped team. There's some old heads and some new heads. So what kind of from like a dev team perspective, why bring back Nexus and not like make a new map or use Desolation? It might be workload related, whichever kind of explanation you might have. But really, why Nexus? Did you feel like that was something that was like a missed opportunity in the past that you really wanted to capitalize?
Yeah, that's certainly part of it. I mean, I was always interested in playing on Nexus just to see how it would play, that just from the player perspective. But also just from the development perspective, workload is, if we have unused assets, especially something that people have dumped a lot of time into this particular map, why wouldn't we use it? If we're moving to a 1v1 format, and it does give us, I would say there's even like sort of a nostalgia hook or a marketing hook to capitalize on, where, well, maybe less on marketing, but like there was a trailer back in 2000, 13 or whatever, that has Nexus, and some people will remember that and be excited to see it in game and actually get a chance to play on it if they didn't have the chance. So there's a lot of good that can come from using this existing map, and it certainly saves us time for making a new one. We could like reuse Desolation, but honestly, I have some issues with Desolation. It's very very open at the moment. The bases are very they're all stamped, and a lot of that was to save us time. I think that it's a good continent. It gives you plenty of space for construction and that sort of thing. But it might have I don't it wasn't built for a 1v1 format,
Hmm.
and it'd be it'd be kind of rough. Uh, yeah, so definitely making use of Nexus, I think was the way to go.
Definitely, yeah, and I guess I have the map right now underneath us. So it's the screen grab from the latest update from the dev team. and it kind of shows the red team versus the blue team, and it shows all the different bases. Um, I guess to start out, there really wasn't a lot information wise when it comes to Nexus. Did you guys make any like adjustments to Nexus to kind of be more, I guess, what modern PlanetSide is? Because I think didn't Nexus get announced when it was still the three different resource pools? It wasn't nanites yet, or that
Yeah,
might
so
have
this was
been.
back in I think that was back in 2000. Was it before? Actually, was it before Hassan? It might have been 2014. Uh, yeah, I can't remember when nanites came in, but as far as the gameplay, I think you're right. Like looking at some of these bases, and I'd be interested to see what the players think. I don't think you're going to find a lot of armor based combat on this map. It's funny because that was kind of one of the advertising hooks, just like yeah, go through the forest as your tank battles and that
Mhm.
sort of thing. I don't think you're going to see that. It is very narrow kind of canyons. There's few open spaces, unlike Desolation, which is the majority open space outside of the. We kind of rely on the players to fill it in. Here is, I think this is very much going to be a battle island that people figure out the strategy to, or a strategy to, and then probably perfect it. So we'll definitely have to see. We didn't make many changes as far as the development team is concerned. A lot of cleanup was done because the thing wasn't. There was like a lot of old assets that just needed to be removed, that were actually removed during Operation Make Faster Game
Mhm.
forever ago, but were just never removed from the map. And there was also no cover on the map, so it was it was just like actually you'll see it in some of the screenshots, that those screenshots are from before our cover pass, and we've added just a lot of more infantry line of sight breaks in particular that'll help flesh out the continent a little bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say like it just looks, and I don't know if it was because I remember watching the trailer both years ago and then like last year when a lot of people brought it up, and just kind of going through it. I don't know if it's just because we're on modern hardware. You know, you look at videos from 2013, 2012 to now, like 4K was not a thing. I don't even think you could really watch like 60 FPS videos on YouTube. Streaming on Twitch was like extremely difficult. But yeah, looking at it, just it looks beautiful. I'm just kind of going through it underneath. I'm sure everybody in chat can also see it. Sorry for the taskbar underneath. Not why that's actually there, but um, it looks it looks revamped. But I don't really know if that's again just because the video we have from years ago is just kind of old, or if that's because of other things. But it definitely looks more on the cleaned up side, and I'm excited to just kind of fly around and just kind of see everything from that perspective. Yeah, if anybody wants to see these photos, I'm not sure. Are these photos from like have they been released somewhere or
They have not.
okay,
Uh, if you Nah, let's hold off. I don't know how much the marketing team is going to make use of these
okay,
particular screenshots. So,
okay?
yeah.
So you guys saw a little sneak peek. You know what? Rel gave us a little sneak, but you're not gonna get too much of the pie too early. All right, you gotta hold off for a sec. We're fasting right now. So you're kind of talking about like perfecting kind of the play style of it. But I do have some questions about like what kind of strategies do you expect to see? You kind of talked about more of an infantry focused side. Desolation didn't have any hard spawns except I guess your warp gate. Um, I guess I just kind of want to walk through a little more in depth about like the map and what you can share with us at the moment. First off, like let's say like the opener. I saw that we're going to be confined to the warp gate. But are you able to spawn in at those bases that you own from the start, like once the match starts? Like let's say you redeployed, or is it just a strictly warp gate opener?
Yeah. So uh, currently, actually, we're currently fixing a bug where you could respawn at the bases even before the match starts. But we're gonna clean that up. The intention would be though to enable spawns at bases as soon as the match opens. However, I'll say that I don't think that that's going to be the play for most people because you have a neutral space between those three bases. So like you can yeah, you can spawn at the next base and then pull vehicles from there. But the distance between there, at least for air vehicles, it's not all that big. So I don't know how much of a time saving that you'll get, and air vehicles will very likely be able to make it to the base before any sort of ground vehicle pulls do from the next base over. If that needs to change, like if we need to put a delay on the spawns for like 20 seconds or whatever after match starts, then we can definitely do something like that. But I don't think it'd be necessary. I do really like watching the openers from the warp gate on Dustillation. It was super interesting because not everybody uses the same setup. On this, it's a little bit more constrained, where there is no construction on this map. You can still use the ant, you just can't pull anything from the terminal. And I think that air vehicles will be very important. And like I said, the routes through to each base are very well confined. So finding any real armor is probably not going to be, or like armor fights is probably not going to be as relevant as it was on Desolation.
Yeah, and just kind of like taking a look at it. I mean, it looks like armor could be more of like a late game, when you're starting to encroach on the enemy warp gate. It looks like there's a little bit more space there, but yeah, it looks like the opener will be very infantry and air focused. But it looks very interesting. I like Aflick and I would talk about this a lot and a long time ago about like some of the most fun Planetside would be is when it would be kind of like a tug of war where you're almost going back and forth. So I think this really captures that feeling while also giving a lot of variety in that, like that center base being able to kind of go past the other bases underneath to the southeast, and you can kind of get a cutoff. So it looks like there's gonna be a lot of opportunities for like when TR had it, like a QRF that would always just be like redeploying, going for back caps, trying to disrupt the flow of the other team. So it does look like there's going to be a lot of opportunities for that, and I think the lattice really bolsters that and makes it an interesting thing to go for, because you kind of saw that a lot in Desolation as well. There were a lot of cutoff opportunities and whatnot. But I guess that kind of concludes the map portion. Is there anything else you kind of want to bring up about the map, or maybe I didn't capture, or I guess we'll just have to wait and see moving forward?
No, I want to say that. So taking a look at the bases on this map, I'm actually very excited to play on it myself. I don't know whose outfit I would join to
Yeah,
do
it's a tough
this.
one.
Yeah, but yeah, they seem really fun to play at, and I kind of want to bite some of these bases for just like other continents or whatever, because the designs are, some of them have some really smart, kind of like almost quirky setups that I think players would find interesting in the sandbox. Um, but we'll have to see. So kudos to the original team who made this stuff to start. I think they did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, and kudos to you guys, the current team, for making it work. Like I know a lot of people are super excited to similar to what you just said, kind of bite into it. It looks like I'm just kind of doing one more pass in the pictures for anybody that kind of wants to see. It's very unique in the sense of how things are there. Like some people will say like, oh, it just looks like Esamir, but this is very different. Like the crevasses are very they kind of surround these bases, and what would be like almost, I don't even know, like it seems so like out of this world. And you've got like that half tech plant, or I don't even know what you'd call it, where it's like there's buildings on top of the tech plant. It looks super interesting. So yeah, I know a lot of people are really looking forward to get their hands on this and come through it with their teams and just show off their stuff. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Um, but I guess that kind of pivots us to the community part now. Some would call this the drama part. I think this is more just, I look at it more like rules and regulations, kind of like how tournaments deal with people who do certain things. Like there was an Apex tournament recently where a teammate teabagged his friend, and they got banned from future from future tournaments with that specific organizer. And there was a lot of back and forth there from the community. So we've had some rumblings, some back and forth conversations about how teams will kind of deal with this moving forward. So I guess I want to start out with last year and the precedent that was set last year, and then we'll kind of move forward. So last year there was an incident of like purposely throwing a match and the developer response was the unspoken code of conduct. Um, is that still applicable? Will there be kind of like a building on that moving forward into this new tournament with new rules and regulations? And what can we expect just from a rule set, both from actually playing and then outside of the tournament? Because I recall another post, I forget whether it was Alpha Wars related or not, but like essentially what you do in the community isn't necessarily only restricted to the game. Like if you're being a nuisance to the community and being a negative impact, you can still get in trouble even though you might not just be logged into Planetside. So I'd like to kind of get your kind of your 2 cents on that, and kind of gave you like 3 questions in a row. So feel free to start wherever you'd like, and we can kind of pivot from there.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a touchy subject. Certainly, like you said, a lot of drama just kind of in the last year. I feel like there was certainly some of it was caused from the format, and I think that our responsibility as developers is to kind of like mitigate that. But there's definitely like people ruining the game for themselves, um, and justified kind of through the lens of like, oh well, if we weren't supposed to play the game this way, it wouldn't be set up this way. And I think that some of that is like it's kind of like a cop out as far as the stance is concerned, in my opinion. But I think when you go into outfit wars, you should know what you're getting into. It is a commitment. It's there are multiple steps here, and I think that the unspoken code of conduct certainly applies still. If players are like not showing up to outfit or to wars, then we'll probably put a probation on your account or your outfit or disqualify you from the war. That's all tech that unfortunately we had to develop last year because of the situation that arose. And fortunately, I think that this year's format will kind of help mitigate a lot of the potential for abuse, the potential for drama, just as it relates to this. But really, what I would like to see personally, and this is what excites me about F Wars 2, is the ability to prove myself against other players. Like just how many of us have been playing this game for? I mean, we're going on 10 years at this point, where you there's only so much you can kind of like elevate, and maybe that's not the goal for people, and that's fine. But I love the sort of pseudo competitive element of fighting other people that I know, or like um, being able to call out and say like, okay, that's a good player. I have to play this different way. That stuff has always kind of excited me, and it's a very like grounded, very personal, very community centric mentality. So in that essence, it's kind of subjective too. But when we formalize these sorts of rules, there should be an expectation that yeah, you're going to play to win. The goal is to win. Unlike the sandbox, where the goal is to throw sand.
Yeah.
It's so we'll take those any sort of like really harsh deviations from sort of this overall mentality, and we'll be punitive to the extent that it makes sense. Hopefully, though, it won't be too out of control this year. I know that there were some rumblings within the community, and that is certainly fuel for this particular conversation. But I don't see it being as big of a deal this year as it was last year.
Okay. Yeah. I guess to there's a couple questions. I guess to kind of go off of that, like that you're closing there when it comes to like it being relatively not as big a deal as last time. And we kind of talked about it a little bit. Do you feel like it's kind of being blown out of proportion, and you don't think it's going to be like really as bad as a lot of people are kind of talking about it to be?
Yeah, I don't. So I want to be very careful not to use the words blown out of proportion, because
Mm-hmm.
it has like a negative connotation usually. But I do feel like our we can amplify a message through social media, or just content creation or other avenues that make this like one thing that you heard from this one person seem like more than it is.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that that certainly could be the case. I mean, I have only seen I've only seen one outfit kind of like publicly state like, okay, yeah, don't do this, don't compete, and obviously don't agree with that. But it doesn't. Outside of that, there is no real indication, at least from where I'm sitting currently, that it is as widespread of a concern as it may be made out to be.
Hmm.
That I don't know if that makes my case any better
No, I
at all.
I think you know. I think what you said is very. I wouldn't even say like out of anything. Like it's very level headed. I think. I agree 100%. Like when you hear one person say something and you want to respond to it, sometimes responding to it validates the argument more that the opposite party was making because it's getting attention. So I understand what you mean, and yeah, I didn't mean to say blown out of proportion in kind of like a negative like aspect, but I think a lot of people who have been hearing things about like no showing matches or just participating in the tournament for negative reasons are very much looking for that dev I don't even know what the word is, like they want that safety of mind, whatever the word is, to kind of make sure that the people who are running the tournament are kind of aware, and they there will be some level of punitive measure in response to people who go against the spirit of the tournament. So yeah, I don't think what you said is any degree like out of pocket or anything like that. Um, So I guess that kind of does also go to this, and I kind of feel like you kind of already answered it, but like a lot of times, you'll see people say like certain things aren't for you in Planetside, whether it's like like very infantry focused people. Some people would argue that Osher isn't for them, or people who just want to play casually. I would say like Jaeger isn't necessarily for you. Do you think Outfit Wars is kind of in that same kind of perspective now, where people who say like if I have to verse a team that has a perceived higher skill than me and I don't want to try to overcome that the tournament just itself is not for them? Or is it one of those just kind of like, everybody should play, and if you find some difficulty, like do what you need to do? Like, because it's such a hard question to ask in the sense of like no one wants to prepare for a match all week and then the team not show up. Like that just sucks in any perspective. So, would you kind of agree into that, or maybe not? Whether that like maybe Outfit Wars isn't for everyone.
So the long and short of it, maybe that could be the case. To me, I mean, just to kind of like buckle down, that sort of thing, the no showing for matches. On one hand, I understand like wanting to protect your players. Like if there's no, you're trying to organize 48 players, and that is no small feat for an outfit. Actually, for many outfits, even the larger ones, will have a hard time gathering those numbers, and much less training them, and like trying to be on it. So I understand that perspective. However, no showing for a match to me like reeks of disrespect, and I think that a lot of that is just because of how I was raised, maybe, to where you should be putting forth like the best effort, and I personally kind of expect that from Outfit Wars. So if that's not the case, if you just want to hang out, kind of like dip your toes in and that sort of thing, it's probably not for you. And if it's not for you, you should also have no real problem with us putting you on probation. I mean, if you if you're not going to fight every time, then yeah, don't fight.
Yeah.
Uh, but once everybody gets one.
Yeah. I guess it's just kind of a hard thing to understand for again what I would call a vocal minority. But again, I think just like having you say it is very important for the whole community at this point. Because a lot of people who are Richard would always call them pillars of the community, like me or Aflick or Kamikaze. Like we have voices, but we're not necessarily the people who have any real control. We're just kind of there to discuss and bring conversation forward. So kind of hearing that from you is going to be reassuring to a lot of people who are really looking forward to the tournament, whether they're seen as super high skill or maybe they're not. Maybe they're a casual outfit, but they're going to do what you said, put your best foot forward. Like I remember going to play basketball in the gym and like I would get destroyed, but like I would still play. I wouldn't just be like, guys, I'm leaving. You guys are too good. Like, nah, it's just messed up to do stuff like that. So I do think a lot of people are going to receive a lot of reassurance from that. Um, so to that skill disparity thing though that people are talking about and worried about, do you think that that'll be solved through kind of like the matchups and people's seedings moving forward? Because it looked like from the post that the dev team made, it looked like team one, rank one, excuse me, was versing rank three, rank two was versing rank four. Is that gonna kind of mitigate some of that where teams who feel like they're gonna be versing a team who's like 4-0 and they're 0-4, will we expect to see like stuff like that, or will there be any sort of, I guess, bracketing to make it so that maybe lower skilled outfits will fight more of the lower skill outfits maybe later in the tournament? Because it is
So I
kind of
think
difficult to, I guess, explain that, but I hope I kind of explained it at least a little bit decently. Sorry.
yeah, I got you. So I think that screenshot is actually a little bit deceptive. Um, so how it works on uh, the match creation is that as a baseline, the first outfit, the first matchup, which will be on the 19th and the 20th. You'll play your game, and then win or loss, you'll get separated, and like next week you'll be matched up against teams based on your win loss ratio. However, there's also a bracket points mechanic where if you have a tie, which half of the people will win, half of the people will lose. So like we're going to end up with loads of ties, unlike last year with how we had like first, second, third place. So it's a little bit, there's more flexibility, but we'll end up with loads of ties. However, the bracket points are very flexible based on your performance. So if even if you win a heavy matchup and you just totally murder it and warp the other faction and have loads of bracket points, you're going to be fighting somebody else with also loads of bracket points. So like as far as skill level is concerned, it should start to work itself out pretty quickly. There's always a possibility of like getting a buy and getting a bunch of bracket points, and then you as a casual team end up against like a top rated team. Is always a thing that can happen. However, just strength of schedule is should kind of just throughout the four qualifier rounds set people up in a way to where they're most often fighting people who are of a similar skill level. That's the expectation. Is that actually what's going to happen? We'll find out. But also to the point of the we talked about just earlier, kind of like dipping your toes in, or even just like fighting a team that's much stronger than you. This year, a different we have sort of a mercy mechanic that's encouraged for teams to pursue. So if you are a really high skilled team, the matchup is 45 minutes of an alert. It's just territory control, and whoever controls the most at the end wins. However, if you can link a warp gate, instant win. You finish the match where it is, and not only that, you gain the remaining pool of bracket points dumped into your into your factions or your team's holdings. So that is it's incentivized that you try to win as quickly as you can and try to warp gate the other team. That way you don't have to share as many points with the other teams based on their amount of territory control. I may be making it sound more complicated than it is, but it's super straightforward. Like
No, I'm
once
tracking.
once people get in, okay, cool.
I'm tracking.
Uh,
I do have a
yeah. So,
question though, or not to, if you want to keep going, then go ahead.
oh no, no. What's the question?
So does the timing of touching the warp gate affect the amount of points? Like if we touch it in the first, let's say 20 minutes, does that change? Is that a different amount of points than like a team who does it in 40 minutes? Or is it the same amount of points for both teams regardless of the timing?
Yeah. So right when the match starts, 500 points is a pool that then gets awarded to. So every minute, uh, each territory that you control gives you 2 points
Hmm.
toward the tiebreaker score. So you get some, default territories. It's just people are going to get some points regardless. And then the neutral bases, once you take them, those will start, pulling points away. But every minute, that pool is getting smaller and smaller
Okay.
as the points are divvied up. So if you can get into the warp gate and lock it down, then that big chunk of points, that pool left will get funneled into your team, and then that'll elevate your bracket score.
Mhm. Okay, cool. Yeah, so that I think it does incentivize not only, to win, but it's also almost going to be like a speed run of like if you really want to get a lot of points, you want to win as soon as possible. So, very very cool. Well, one more question. I did want to keep this basically an hour because I know we could probably talk for like 3 hours or something like that. One final question is really based around, and you kind of touched on it a little bit early on, ringing and stacking. People playing in multiple teams, people playing in multiple servers. Um, do you have any sort of, I guess, stance on it? You kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, saying you don't think it's going to be as much of a thing as last year. But I think a lot of people are interested in the dev stance of what will occur for teams who are sharing a lot of players or people who are playing on 5 different teams, stuff like that. Because I know a lot of people want to maximize how much they play on it. I was one of those people last year, so my bad. But I think a lot of people are interested in the like how many times can they play? Are they restricted to just one team throughout the whole tournament, regardless of server? Can they play on one team per server? Stuff like that. So I'll kind of hand that over to you for the final question of tonight.
Yeah, so unlike no shows, ringing is a little bit more difficult to define and also like determine as far as how things should or shouldn't go. Because I mean, at this point, if you're so I'm not gonna sanction ringing. Personally, it rubs me the wrong way, um, but it, like I said, difficult to define because you have like at this point, 10 years in, players do have a lot of characters on multiple accounts. They play with lots of people on multiple servers and that sort of thing. The accommodation that we have offered, however, is for you can play on one outfit war on each server. So if you have multiple characters or whatever, that's totally fine. I would suggest that players don't play on multiple accounts for the same team or for the same in the same war. Rather, it is again difficult to discern. I would certainly not mind taking punitive action if it's like really heavy-handed. This is probably the most difficult question though because it is just so nebulous.
Mm.
I hope that players play in good faith to the best of their abilities, and we have certainly tried from our end to make considerations for players who want to play in multiple wars, but at the same time we've tried to restrict outfits from like sharing players, like at least on the same like the same character is not going to be able to like dip in, jump in an outfit war, jump out, play on different, like they'd have to play on a new account
Hmm.
on the on the same server. And that is like that's the extreme that you're going to ring, like it's absolutely 100% ring. So ooh, I don't know. I don't have a good answer.
It's a tough one.
Shock. This is the most difficult question.
I think you answered it though. I think because it is difficult to, like you said, I guess enforce a rule like that because like you said, either it's hard to track people who are doing multiple accounts, and then also you've got this other side of people. I was in Bax Goku and 1TR at all the same time, and I was in leadership of all three at the same time. So it'd be a really hard decision for me if I was still active in those outfits to to choose one over the other. So, but I think you answered it just in the sense of, you know, the you guys and the dev team want to have a fun tournament. And this kind of sounds like it's kind of the sentiment across the board, whether it comes to no showing matches, ringing, stacking. Like everybody just wants to have fun, prove themselves, choose a team, play with your friends, have a good time, and just make it a fun month or 2 months, however long it's gonna be. And I think that's a solid enough answer. You know, I wasn't expecting you to say we're gonna track down every single one of them and ban them. So no, I think that not only that answer, but I think you've shed a lot of light on just basically a lot of the stuff that people have been asking about, whether community wise, format wise, map wise. So really appreciate you taking the time. I guess closing statements. Is there anything you'd like to, I guess, say to the community moving forward as we get ready to start enlisting next month, and then we, or not next month, excuse me, tomorrow, and then we start playing here in the next couple weeks.
Uh, yeah, the first one is mostly that just like give feedback. We Nexus is new. The format is new. Fighting 1v1 against the same faction is new. There's probably going to end up being a lot of rough edges to smooth out. Um, Anybody who can like bug repros and that sort of thing is very very helpful to us, just kind of in general. And uh, I think that's really the gist of it. I really hope that people have fun. It is a cool opportunity to add something that has like lasting value to the game, and I really hope players don't ruin it for themselves like
Yeah.
that. Sometimes that can happen. We just kind of like can focus too much on efficiency and kind of like trade away the fun, and it's yeah, I hate to see it.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think moving forward, this looks like, I mean, I was one of the biggest naysayers last year. I am very, very excited for it. I look forward to all the different teams having a chance to, you know, go head to head and verse each other in a very balanced way. And like you said, you know, I don't want to see, you know, teams ruin it for themselves just by getting too lost in the sauce about the drama or the Reddit posts and stuff. Like at the end of the day, like it's a tournament, it's a game mode. We're here for that game mode. We're here for that game, and that should kind of just be the end of it. Not saying like other content that comes around it, like the memes that come from it are great, all the jokes and stuff are amazing, but lots of cringe stuff happened last year with like doxing and threats and people just throwing just weird stuff back and forth just because of the format being them too lost in it. So um anyways, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and doing it live. Anybody here, we haven't read chat at all. We're not doing a Q&A, sorry. But if you came in late and you missed anything, this will be uploaded to YouTube probably tonight, hopefully. So I think exclamation point YouTube still works. But other than that, appreciate you guys. We're gonna be going offline. Have a great night, and we will see you tomorrow for enlistment. But until then, thanks, guys. Goodbye. Toodaloo.